This is all about Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Let's take a look at our top stories. Investors are pumping a record of nearly $1.5 billion into digital asset investment products last week, fueled by a rally in cryptocurrencies and the launch of the first Bitcoin futures exchange traded fund, according to CoinShares. Bitcoin-focused funds dominated last week's inflows with a 99% share of all inflows into crypto funds. Meanwhile, MasterCard and digital asset platform BAKKT are partnering to allow merchants and banks to build cryptocurrency into their offerings. MasterCard saying consumers can buy, sell, and hold digital assets through custodial wallets offered by BAKKT, and customers can collect and spend loyalty rewards through cryptocurrency. And finally, Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen is a hodler telling the New York Times she's managing financially for the foreseeable future because she bought crypto at the right time. Haugen left Facebook in May, taking with her tens of thousands of documents showing the company prioritizing its growth over its users' well-being. All right, let's have a live look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index right now trading at $63,068, charging ahead at almost 5% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
And check out Bitcoin's daily returns last week as tracked by CoinDesk's research team there. Daily average percentage gains peaked on Tuesday, the day that ProShares launched that Bitcoin futures ETF in the United States. ProShares hauled in over $500 million of assets in its first day, with over $1 billion in trading, one of the most successful ETF launches ever. Friday also saw the launch of Valkyrie Investments Bitcoin futures ETF down there with an $80 million volume debut. Very impressive, but proving that first mover advantage is real. ProShares traded about $500 million in comparison that day. Funding rates across major exchanges were lower over the weekend, making it cheaper for traders to take more long leverage on Bitcoin. When funding rates drop, it's generally a sign there's less demand from traders for leverage to bet on price gains, an indication the market is becoming less overheated. The lower funding rates also make it cheaper for traders to put on new leveraged positions. Stack funds forecasting the rally will continue from here and that the recent pullback was needed to cool down speculators. Meanwhile, the third Bitcoin futures ETF from VanEck is expected to launch on Tuesday, tomorrow, under the stock ticker XBTF. And joining us now to discuss Bitcoin news and more is Jesse Proudman, co-founder and CEO of SEC-registered crypto robo-advisor Makara. Hi there, Jesse. So just taking a look at Bitcoin's movements, over the past 24 hours, it fluctuated between 59 and 63. Now it's pushing through that $63,000 threshold. Where do you see it going short term?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me today. I think Q4 has always been an exciting time for this asset class, and certainly a significant number of positive quarters in the duration of the history. Last week, with the launch of these ETFs, I think really demonstrated that there is demand for simpler ways to access this asset class. I think for most, it's still too complicated and confusing and challenging to allocate to. And so simplified products like these ETF offerings really provide an avenue for new market participants to join in.
Do you have a price target or forecast for the end of the year for Bitcoin?
Based on what we're seeing with the interest with these ETF launches, with the rates of participation in large corporations and new product launches and the like, we feel like it is a very positive sign for price appreciation in the quarter. We don't set price targets, but I feel like it will be a positive quarter.
All right. And are you advising clients to buy into these Bitcoin futures ETF? I understand that it's not the best investment considering the premiums involved. Better to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny product. And it's interesting to me that the SEC approved this over a spot held offering. There's a number of challenges with these futures-based products, mostly around sort of the return stream and how that's impacted by the use of futures. So these futures products, they have to be rolled over every month. And the process in doing that adds fees to the holdings, and so the return stream can be reduced in a pretty significant way. I think ProShares estimates that their annualized rollings will cost 2.5% a year. But if you look at the actual data, it looks like it can be as high as 17% a year. You also end up with some interesting changes in price. So like GBTC is up 5% today, commensurate with Bitcoin. But the two ETFs, the futures ETFs, are up about 3.5%. They don't track the actual underlying asset. They're sort of these synthetic wrappers that don't actually get you true exposure to the asset class.
So we had ProShares launch last week, as well as BAKKT Investments, their iteration of a Bitcoin futures ETF. Tomorrow, we're expecting VanEck. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the three, but, if you were to compare and contrast, what do you think is the better one to go into?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty funny, and we'll see probably a few more launch here. It's a bit like having 7 different Bitcoins. They're all effectively doing the same thing. I think ProShares will say that they are actively managing the futures rollover, but that means they're basically picking which day they're going to roll over at the end of the month. The VanEck product is coming in at 65 basis points versus 95 basis points in fees for the BAKKT and ProShares offering. So there's definitely going to be sort of a race to the bottom from a fee perspective, but it's hard to differentiate on any of these actual underlying products. They're all effectively doing the same thing.
Right. But it appears, though, that the first mover advantage is really having a great impact on ProShares. And do you see that continuing just because of that first entry into the market?
For a commodity product like this, I think fees ultimately become the biggest driver. And so as VanEck launches soon, I don't think the data's been set yet, but I would imagine we will see volume transition given that they are charging a pretty significant reduction in fees. These products are all so similar that it's hard to really differentiate one product from another outside of the fees that they charge.
Can you go over some of the pros and cons of investing in a Bitcoin futures ETF? You mentioned some already, but I believe, volatility is another one, the arbitrage risk, as well as the limited trading hours.
Yeah, these products, wrapping sort of Bitcoin and crypto offerings, which are 24/7 volatile products, into Wall Street wrappers, which trade 9 to 5 banker hours, create some interesting challenges. And if you look at the volatility in the crypto markets, the majority of the large movements happen after hours. With March 12th of 2020, with the big drop down to $4,000, that was after hours. May of this year, there was a large drop, that was after hours. And so these products, as ETFs traded on traditional exchanges and brokerages, they don't permit access to trade in those big movements. So you can't buy if you want to buy low, and you can't sell if you're trying to get out. So that's one big consideration that really makes them less favorable than buying traditional spot Bitcoin. So
what are you advising your clients to do? Are you advising them to stay away from these Bitcoin futures ETFs?
I think there are simpler ways for people to access Bitcoin that are not sort of wrapped in these Wall Street offerings. There are,
but the thing is, some people don't have a choice. Like they can only they can't get Bitcoin exposure
because of the regulatory considerations.
Right. So
yep. These products are great in that they provide access to 401ks or other large regulated institutions. But if you look at a lot of the data, it seems to indicate that a lot of the initial participation is actually coming from retail traders. And I think those retail traders don't understand sort of the limitations and the fee considerations with these particular products. So it's just something to be cognizant of. There are better ways to gain access to Bitcoin than these particular products.
Yeah, interesting about the retail traders. All right. Another one I wanted to touch on was Tesla stock is hitting $1 trillion market cap for the first time, trading over $1,000. In the first quarter of 2021, Tesla invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin and has been used as a proxy for some to get some sort of Bitcoin exposure. In their last quarterly SEC filing, they said no Bitcoin was sold and that they may in the future, quote, restart the practice of transacting in digital assets for their products and services. So do you think people are still investing in Bitcoin as a proxy, or is that now going to be funneled into these ETF products?
Yeah, I know. I think there's been interesting stocks like Tesla, like MicroStrategy, that really have acted as that proxy for funds or other firms that haven't had access to be able to buy spot Bitcoin to use as that proxy. I don't think that's applicable anymore given these other products. Again, I think there are better ways to gain access than using a company like Tesla. Now, I think Tesla is interesting in that you've got sort of this fascinating business with interesting and compelling fundamentals combined with its exposure to digital assets. So it can give you sort of a 1-2 advantage above just buying and holding a Bitcoin. But using it as a straight proxy doesn't seem like the best choice anymore.
Right. All right, Jesse. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate your insights. That was Makara CEO Jesse Proudman. Coming up, heading over to Money 2020 in Las Vegas with crypto tax manager Bitwave.
CoinDesk Indexes, the market standard for crypto assets since 2014. Our trusted data powers billions in publicly traded funds. CoinDesk Indexes are the standard used by institutions, and they're the key for investors looking to understand and access crypto markets.
As the company that launched the world's first ever Bitcoin ETF, we at Purpose chose the CoinDesk Bitcoin Price Index, the XBX, to price our assets.
CoinDesk Indexes enabled the early adopters to build crypto investment vehicles, and they're already trusted by a new generation of global investors.
All right, Money 2020 is happening in Las Vegas, a key conference for the fintech world. And joining us now to discuss is Pat White, CEO of Crypto Tax Accounting and Compliance Manager, Bitwave. All right. Great to see you, Pat. You know, how is Las Vegas right now? You know, Money 2020 has been a place where a lot of folks in the fintech world have gathered. You know, in the early days, Bitcoin and Bitcoin enthusiasts were a very small part, almost laughed at part of the conference. But now, are you seeing growing crypto acceptance and, you know, vendors?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. It is a real pleasure. Crypto is here, and it is a serious force. I mean, essentially, the themes for Money 2020 this year, as far as I can tell, have been identity, risk management, and payments, and then crypto. And you know, crypto is funny because it cuts across all of those. It really does touch on every single one of those pieces, from risk to identity to just the payments piece. And so everyone is excited to talk about this. You know, we've had people stop by the booth today for us to talk from grocery stores who are saying like, hey, you know, what does it actually mean for a grocery? Like, what is our customer going to come in and pay with crypto to buy a bag of salad? Like, is that how this is going to work? So we're seeing broad excitement about this, broad interest in crypto in general, and I think this is just going to expand. I mean, it's going to be great.
And you also have an announcement that you're launching the industry's digital asset maturity model. Tell me a bit about that and walk us through an explainer what that is exactly.
We are. So Bitwave is we are the world's, the leading tax and accounting solution for businesses that use crypto. We really clearly say, for businesses, we don't do taxes for individual retail users. We do, accounting and tax for businesses using crypto. And what happens is we keep seeing the same problems over and over and over again. It's one of those things that crypto it's kind of the unruly child of so many different things. I mean, it really is. Like, it's the unruly child of credit cards and bank accounts. It's the unruly child of Forex and securities like you would traditionally have. And all of these problems make it so hard if you are a CFO or if you are a controller at a company and someone comes to you and says, hey, we want to start a crypto project or initiative. We want to bring a little crypto on the balance sheet to, inflation's at 4% right now. Let's bring some Bitcoin onto the balance sheet to hedge inflation. You don't have a roadmap on what to do. So the digital asset maturity model is our attempt to put together a maturity model. If your viewers are familiar with the term, it's a pretty common term in enterprise software, which is it's sort of a step-by-step guide to go from like, oh my God, what is going on, through, hey, we're experts in the space. We are sophisticated. We go from like, hey, our CTO bought some Ethereum and we are screwed, all the way through like, hey, we are going into paper markets. We are borrowing money. We are paying payroll through streaming payroll contracts. And we have customers at all stages of that. We see customers who it's their first time touching crypto and they're terrified, all the way who have full trading desks as enterprises, businesses that have, financial analysts that work for them that are doing nothing but thinking about DeFi, figuring out how to fund their business, issuing bonds onto the blockchain. It's a really revolutionary time. And that's what's fun about being here at Money 2020 is I get to, get in the room with guys who, with bankers and different people like that and say, there's a real world where your entire business is upended in the next 5 years because suddenly all payments go peer-to-peer, or all the lending, credit cards go on the blockchain, or all these different issues that we're seeing change the nature drastically because of DeFi and crypto.
So how does this make the crypto tax accounting system for businesses easier, exactly, because it is very confusing. The rules are not always so clear. How do you get them over that threshold of being able to understand how to track for these volatile crypto assets?
It's such a great question. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to build easy to use software, and it has to be incredibly configurable. I mean, it's a funny way to sort of think about it, but our software has to be usable by people who maybe don't spend a lot of time with crypto. Like, you think about most bookkeepers or accountants, they didn't get into bookkeeping because they were crypto enthusiasts. They maybe just went to get a job at a company, and suddenly that company is in crypto, and you have to basically take someone and upskill them in two dimensions. And that's how we tend to think about it. As a bookkeeper might traditionally do a lot of, the accounting work at a business.
Do you think the current system is though clear? Do you think it's fair for
oh gosh, what a difficult question. I mean, clear, yes. There's, there are questions around the edges. Like, a great question that we always talk about is ETH to WETH. Is that a trade, or is that a taxable event or a non-taxable event? It would be amazing to get some regulatory clarity around that. But at the end of the day, like that, you're not talking about billions of dollars of issues. Like, when I spend crypto, it is very clear that is a disposition of that asset that picks up a taxable event that needs to get satisfied. So if I paid you, 1 Bitcoin for this interview, I would be paying taxes on that because Bitcoin's near its all-time high, and I didn't buy any yesterday. So, there's those rules are incredibly clear. The accounting for it's relatively clear too. Like, when I pay you that 1 Bitcoin, I need to get that into my accounting system. Like, QuickBooks needs to show one Bitcoin of fair market value of USD worth of advertising expense or whatever it is. So the rules are not as cloudy as people try to make them in some ways.
Really? But by the same token, you can incur a huge loss, have to pay for that, or rather, you can make a gain and then have to account for that and pay the taxes of that, and then incur a huge loss. So then not only are you paying your gains, but you're also incurring this huge loss. I mean, I don't know how that's difficult to reconcile for a business.
It certainly is. I mean, that's the thing, is that you don't really want to get into digital assets as, if you are getting into digital assets to trade them, then you get into trade them, and then you can mark to market, and you can mark up on good months and down on bad months, and it sort of washes out. If you are getting in as a hedge, then you really want to be conscientious of that. Like, you want to take your funds and hold it and really sit on it for a while. So right. I think that it's all use case driven. Like, why are you as a business getting into crypto? Like, is it part of your business? Then you have a vested interest in Ethereum. Then you want to hold the ETH and just use a little bit as you're doing your development work. But if you're a business and you want to hedge inflation, then you hold on to Bitcoin.
Well, Pat, thanks for making it, or trying to make it easier for people to understand how account for their crypto. It's not an easy process, and tax season is just around the corner. Thanks for joining us. That was Bitwave.
Thank you so much.
Pat White. All right, that's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.